9 a.m. on Monday, August 19th. I'd like to call to order the Kane County Finance and Budget Committee. We have roll call, please.
Juby,
To be here.
Lewis, Sanchez, Surges, Tepe,
Tepe here.
Leonard,
Here.
Berman.
Quorum is here.
Quorum.
We have a quorum. We have a remote attendance request by Anita Lewis and Jared Sanchez. Is that all right with the rest? Very good. We have no minutes. Public comments for agenda items. I have no one signed up. Public comments for non-agenda items. Again, no one signed up. Item 7 is new business. And we'll start with item A, a fiscal year 2025 budget presentation with Ms. Hopkinson.
Hello. So before we get into everything else today, the presentation that is before you provides information that includes responses to last week's Finance Committee requests of the Finance Committee to various offices and departments across the county. And so I'll go through all of that information. The first page last week, this committee requested that specific departments and offices cut a total of $5 million from their 2025 budget. We received responses from most of the departments, including responses that they could not cut their budget. 4 departments did provide budget cuts. Information technologies, the finance department, the county board, and the supervisor of assessments. Those 4 offices provided cuts totaling $544,000. This next slide shows the details of those cuts. I'll speak just for my department. We found some special revenue fund that we can put our computer software costs into for $30,000. And we just bid out our certified audit contract. We just received the bid a couple weeks ago. Hopefully we'll be taking the winner to the regularly scheduled Finance Committee next week. But the bids came in lower. We also are going to have, our finance department is going to do the footnotes ourselves this year, which will save costs. We usually have the audit firm do that. We're going to tackle that ourselves. So that savings there. County board has some savings on operating supplies and contractual services. Supervisor of assessment is also going to cut some software costs, hasn't not yet identified which special revenue fund, but is going to be working to see if a special revenue fund is available to cover some of its software costs. IT is also going to be cutting some software, or the information that was provided by Roger indicates that there's some software that was planned, new Microsoft software that was planned for 2025. He will delay that a year, but it's inevitable that it has to be implemented eventually. So those are some of the cuts that total the $544,000. The buildings management department also provided, so that was the $5 million in cuts. The board had also recommended, or this finance committee had also recommended, the elimination of the $4.3 million in transfers from the general fund to the capital projects fund. Buildings management provided this list of the building improvement projects that will be impacted by the elimination of that $4.3 million. So these are all itemized here. And then this was some information that the Finance Committee had requested 2 weeks ago, and I provided it to them in an email. But I included it in this slide deck because there were some questions last week about the budgeted numbers for the general government revenues of the county. So up at the top, there's various general government revenues that come into the general fund, such as property taxes, sales taxes, the RTA sales tax, income taxes, local use tax, personal property replacement tax, TIF distribution tax. The sales taxes, we're looking at those. I mean, we look at those constantly. Right now, they're kind of flat compared to last year. They're actually under our 2024 budget. The personal property replacement tax, it was 5.7 million in 2022. We're budgeting 3.2 million for 2024 and 2025. If you recall, I include every month in my executive director's report, I include an analysis of all of our revenue sources. The state had indicated, if you recall, that they had overpaid PPRT in 2022 based on some erroneous calculations. And so the numbers that we have put in for our 2024 forecast and 2025 budget are more reflective of what is actually happening. And I also want to highlight our property tax levy. The county has one property tax levy, but those property taxes are spread across multiple funds in the county. They go to our general fund, and that's what's highlighted in yellow. Our insurance liability fund, IMRF, our FICA Social Security, which is essentially our payroll taxes for general fund employees, county highway, county bridge, county highway matching, county health department, and Veterans Commission. What we have typically done over the years, except for the county highway, county bridge, county highway matching, county health, all of the other funds, we vary how much is being allocated to those funds and property taxes. So you'll notice if you look back historically, you'll see the same amount. You'll see the same amounts every year going to county highway, county bridge, but you'll see different amounts going to those other funds and property taxes. And our Veterans Commission typically has been increasing the last few years, and the county chooses to use property taxes to fund Veterans Commission. So any sort of a property tax increase, that would, the recommendation would be that that would be the first fund that would receive any increase in property taxes. And then also through the analysis that I'm going to show here shortly, our payroll tax fund is very low on fund balance. In fact, we're using reserves right now to balance that budget. And any new property tax revenue, even if we didn't raise property taxes and we just took the property taxes on new construction, we have to put it in that payroll tax fund, which is also known as the FICA Social Security Fund, because we're about to go in the red in that fund. We have asked the Illinois Department of Revenue over the last year or so what it would look like if we put in, if the voters of King County put in a special county retailer's occupation tax to fund our public safety. And as you know, the special county retailer's tax can fund public safety, transportation, facilities, mental health, or substance abuse. And this county has been looking at the use of those proceeds to fund public safety. So back in 2023, the state gave us an analysis that said, based on current sales taxes, we would, for the period of August 22 through July 23, 0.25% would bring in 17 million. Then we asked them for an update just this past April, what it would look like if it was a 1%. And their estimates for the period March 2023, February 2024 was close to 69 million. Last week, this committee had asked for various scenarios of what it would look like if the county if the voters imposed a special county retailer's occupation tax. So I have 4 slides here that are at 0.25%, 0.50, 0.75, and 1. The actual, no, and it starts with actual 2023 going all the way through a forecast of 2030. And again, this is just a forecast, right? So things are subject to change. The actual for 2023 for our general funds shows that our fund balance went from 98.9 million down to 87.6 million, which we had expected and budgeted for. Our 2024 current estimate shows a drop from that 87 million down to 71 million. And if you look at the way this chart works, I'm showing the beginning and ending projected fund balance for our general fund. What is our 90-day reserve? And the 90-day is just calculated as what is 90 days of the future year's expenditures. And then what are our fund balance reserves in excess, which is just simple math of subtracting the 90-day reserve from the ending fund balance. Our forecast, and we put together a forecast. We had we sent that to a report out to all the finance committee members. The forecast for 2024 shows that revenues in excess of expenditures for 2024 is about 16 million. And just to kind of show the breakdown, and again, some of our revenues are down in general fund. You may say, wow, how is that possible? It's because of the personal property replacement tax. Our sales taxes are lower right now than last year. Expenditures, that top line is, you know, call it your regular operating expenditures. And then I just itemized the amounts that are a transfer to our capital projects fund, transfer to CANCOM. Let me just explain why we're transferring to CANCOM. So CANCOM serves a variety of jurisdictions over Kane County, including the county. They serve our own sheriff's department. So that transfer that the general fund makes every year over to our CANCOM fund, because CANCOM operations are in a special revenue fund, is the cost of serving our own sheriff. And that calculation is updated every year. And then transferred to debt service. And as you can see, we've got, we have a debt service that's ending in 2025 in terms of funding it. And then we have a new one starting. So that's built into that forecast there. And I used my note there. I used a revenue growth at 2% based on just looking back at historical, just did like a compound annual growth calculation. Our expenditures, I forecast at 4%, but I will tell you from doing a look back over the last 6 years, it was actually like more like 7% compound annual growth rate in our general fund. But I used 4. So take that into account when you're looking at these numbers. So when you flip through the charts, if you built in a special county retailer's occupation tax at 0.25%, it would not be sufficient to balance the general fund. If you did a 0.50, it would be sufficient for a time, but 5 years out, it wouldn't be enough. But actually, in terms of excess reserves, but if you're looking already at 2028, you're already, you're in the red in terms of expenditures or exceeding revenues. 0.75, again, these are just forecasts and estimates. 0.75 is the first chart where it shows that we would not be, revenues would be exceeding expenditures every year, and we would be building up a fund balance. And then 1% shows the same thing, obviously, larger numbers. And I will point out, we need to, and I built into this budget just a transfer to capital projects of 5 million a year. But that is, we don't know what all of our future capital projects. We've talked about all sorts of purchases and expansions and replacements of equipment that the county has, both facilities and IT. That 8.3 million in 2023 was election equipment, which was really not on the horizon. And then we needed that much money to buy new election equipment. So we need to have, the county needs to have a capital projects fund with a balance in it for capital projects that come up. Just got the updated, this is just a draft, of course, from the Supervisor of Assessments, Mark Armstrong. This is the latest report for the upcoming tax year with the rate setting EAV. And when you put those numbers together, and the state's consumer price index for next year is 3.4%. If we were to take these numbers and provide it and do the calculation on what would it look like if we raised taxes by 3.4%, or what if we raised taxes by 0%, which would still pick up new construction at 3.4, it would be 2.6 million. Although the increase, once you run and add new construction to it, it's actually a 4.5% increase, but it could bring in 2.6 million. If we didn't raise property taxes, but included new construction, it would bring in $657,000. And again, I'll do this next slide here. My recommendation would be that if the county just did that, based on the draft budgets by the Veterans Commission and our FICA Social Security Fund, I would apply that $657,000 to Veterans Commission Fund and the FICA Social Security Fund. So the general fund wouldn't be benefiting from that. And we really need to fund our FICA Social Security because we can't not pay payroll taxes. And then I presented these slides a few meetings ago, and I'll just run through them again. This is a similar chart to how I've been showing the general fund, but it shows how both our FICA fund and our IMRF fund are using reserves. So 2023, actually we didn't use reserves, but 2024, we're using $837,000 in reserves to balance our payroll tax fund. 2025, we're using 1.2 million to balance our FICA funds. And if you carry that forward, by 2026, we will be in the red in our FICA fund, our payroll tax fund, essentially wiping out our reserves in that fund, which is why I'm recommending that we put any property tax increase in that fund. And we may need to move more. We may need to move more from, and we would most likely take it from the general fund because it's not going to be enough. The IMRF fund, same thing, not as bad as the FICA fund. That we would be, because it has a larger fund balance right now. But it too needs, for 2023 actual, 2024 forecast, and 2025 budget. For 2025 budget, we would need $2 million of the reserves in the IMRF fund to balance that fund's budget. And it would too also be going into the red in 2026. And this is just our calendar, our budget calendar. So if anybody has any questions.
Ms. Doobie.
Okay, I have a lot of questions. First of all, if you go back to page 19, where you talk about it's going in the red in 2026, it's actually going in the red in the reserves in excess of 90 days, correct?
Page, which one again?
It's right there.
Okay, that one. Um,
So in the 90-day reserve target, it's
Right.
actually still in the black.
right.
So it's not really going in.
Let's
in
see,
the red.
IMRA fund reserves. Yeah, in 2027, we would have used it all up.
In 2027, we still have 3 million in the 90-day reserve target, however.
No, because our reserves in excess are -4, so we've actually used it up. We've actually gone under by 1.4 million.
So why does it say on the 90 reserve target that in 2027 we'll have just over $3 million in there?
That's just the target. That's just what the target number would be. And then the reserves in excess are in the red by 4.5, which means we've already used up that 3 million and we've used up. Yeah, that would be an impossibility, actually. That would be an impossible situation.
Okay. When we asked for what I was interested in knowing what the dollar amounts estimated of the percentage for the quarter, half, 3/4. It's kind of confusing to me when it's all put in each slot. Would you be able to give me
So
an
if you go
estimate?
back to the letter, and IDOR basically just ran this based on the sales activity in King County. So both of their calculations are using the same numbers, but their estimate is that a 0.25% is 17 million. So 0.50 would be double that, 0.75 would be triple that, and 1 would be 4 times that amount.
So the letter from 2023 is pretty accurate for 20. It hasn't
Yeah, if you
changed
look,
that much.
if you look at the letter that they sent us in April of 2024, it says that these amounts listed are equal to the 0.25 countywide sales tax reported. So they basically just took that $17 million and multiplied it by 4.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't know if that was the accurate estimate.
And that's just an estimate by them based on, again, because the county's already collecting sales tax, 2 types of sales taxes. We're collecting state sales tax, which is a state sales tax, and we're collecting our share. And then the RTA sales tax is also a sales tax. And if you look at my monthly reports to the finance committee, those 2 revenue lines, the state sales tax and the RTA sales tax, follow each other on a graph. They're the same line because they're being applied to the same types of merchandise and items.
Okay.
So that's why they basically, Illinois Department of Revenue looked at our sales activity and said, this is what you could generate based on that sort of sales tax with these rates.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. What is the tax that we get at the end of the year? It's like usually like $5 million, 4-point-something million. What is that one?
The
that we
audit?
get?
The tax at the end of the
Don't we
year.
get a tax at the end of I don't know what it is. Do we get a tax at the end of the year? We don't get money from the state at the end of the year?
I'm not sure. We get all of our tax revenue, income tax, it comes in monthly.
Monthly.
Okay, so we don't get anything in like November, December that's a
know.
lump of something?
I'm
Okay,
where.
thank you.
Mr. Tippy?
Thank you. Good morning. Kathy, would you go to the slides associated with the capital funds associated?
Oh, the cuts.
Just wanted to understand roughly, what were the capital funds that were used this year?
From the general fund or from the capital projects fund?
Both.
Don't have the capital projects fund number handy. Actually, it should be, the forecast should be in that report that I sent. I can look it up in a second. I don't have that printed out in front of me. But the estimated transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund for 2024 is on that one slide. It's about 437,000.
Then you had put in an amount for 25 of 5 million, which we are now taking out.
I put, no, the current budget, I left it as is until any action is taken. The current budget for 2025 shows a potential transfer of 4.3 million
Okay.
from the general fund to the capital projects fund, starting in 2026. I put in 5. If you listen to the buildings management presentation from last Wednesday, there was talk of how some of because the buildings management has a 5-year capital plan, and how because of the fact that ARPA funds are available for some of their projects, some of their HVAC projects, they moved up certain of their projects to start this year to take advantage of those ARPA funds.
And put about $6 million from the ARPA funds.
So I believe that approximately $17 million in ARPA funds have in essence been approved by the county board to fund a variety of buildings management projects, mostly HVAC projects.
The point I wanted to
yeah.
get to, sorry to sound confusing, the point I wanted to get to is that just to maintain our facilities, we need a minimum amount of at least $5 million in the capital fund each year.
Right. That's why I'm recommending to essentially operate under the notion that we don't need to fund capital is not practical.
Correct.
We have to have, and in fact, other governments call these funds different things. They call them sinking funds, what have you, but you have to have money set aside for when a boiler breaks down or whatever is going to happen, or new software comes online and outmodes all the old software, or election equipment that needs to be replaced suddenly, because we do not have a fund. There is an election equipment fund, but it has very small dollars in it. We have no plan to build up or fund those funds over time so that when the equipment needs to be replaced, we have the money available, and we should have that.
And the other point I want to make is that it's been made very clear to me that in addition to needing space here at this center, that we're going to have a demand at the Judicial Center for the state's attorney and for more courtrooms. And that's been made very clear to me. And there is no funding associated with that in any of your plans that you put forth, correct?
Correct. If you look at any of these forecasts, as I said, this is an estimate. It didn't really take into consideration future building expansion plans. I just put in 5 million just as a placeholder number, based on
5 million would really just handle maintenance as well as emergencies.
Yes, I mean, if you look at the capital plan of the Buildings Management Department, it's a $41 million plan over 5 years. So there's that amount of work that needs to be done. 17 million of it's going to be funded by ARPA. So,
Thank you.
and I will also say this just as a, another reason for us, for this county to ensure that we have a balanced budget and stop using our reserves is to maintain good ratings with our rating agencies, because if we have any notion of in the future issuing more debt, and we are in the red, it will be much more difficult to issue debt if we need to, and more expensive.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms. Bates.
I am going to ask one more time, and maybe many more times, send these emails out to the entire board. This is driving me crazy. I've got to make these decisions in another couple weeks. I need this information ahead of time, please. If you're going to send something to the finance committee, click all of the above. I can't be prepared for these meetings without seeing them ahead of time. And I trust I'm speaking for other non-members of the finance committee. Don't make me mad.
Mr. Chair.
Julie,
First of all, we got these on Saturday night late and I did not send them to you. I'm very, very sorry.
It's not your job, but thank you.
I understand
very,
that, but
very
we
much.
did not get them with enough time to actually go through. I wasn't even able to ask any questions in advance, so I'm going to ask questions now. Going on to the 2024 actual and 2024 estimated that you sent to us Saturday night. I just need some clarification on the 2024 estimated amount. What does that mean exactly? Is that what you project it's going to cost?
That is the estimate of what the actual expenditures will. be.
Okay, so why do we have some 2024 actuals that are higher than our 2024 estimates?
Um,
Because that
that
doesn't
could
seem
be
like
an-
that's
That could be
possible.
it's an oversight, clearly.
So we have an oversight in these reports.
Yes.
Okay, so I can't trust anything that's in these reports.
Okay.
So Mavis, there you go.
Which-
Doesn't
which-
matter.
Which department had
Well, when I
more
started,
more actual than estimated?
when I started taking notes on it, and I had to do it actually on my phone because it was late before I got it. On page 23 of your 58 page thing, you have contractual consulting year to date is at 172,885, but you're estimating it at 441,000. So that's a problem. Computers, were estimated at 245,000. Let me see if I can find it. Wait, page 23. I'm sorry. I normally have these things done in advance. I just did not have time. Okay, on page 23 in computers, where is it? We have an estimated. Oh, no, that's not more. That one's actually less. So I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to go to page 26. Again, I apologize. It's the first draft in my head. On page 26, we have contractual consulting year to date at 17,832, and the estimate is 16,078. That is on line 50150 under contractual services. On page 28, we have employee mileage. At now, it's $248.47, and the estimate is 150. On page 31, we have 0 at year to date, but the estimate's 5,600. On page 32, we have healthcare contribution year to date, 92,000, or I think it's 92,862, but the estimated amount is 0.
Right, all the healthcare, all the health and dental for 2024 and 2025 is not within the departments, it's in countywide.
Okay, so we have one that makes sense to me. Okay. Page 32, copiers year to date. We have $4,858.90. An estimate is 2,819. We have conferences and meetings, 3,050. Estimate is 2,080. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, we basically had all the departments enter their estimates. And we reviewed them, and if I missed some, it's definitely an oversight on my
Okay,
part.
the problem with that is it makes me not know that I can trust any of the numbers, because those are the only ones that I can actually look at. I don't know all the other things. So this is very problematic for me. And again, I'm sorry, I would have sent it to you in advance had I had time. I have pages of these, but I don't understand how when we get data, the data is different and we're supposed to be like, oh, okay, well, it's
Yeah,
fine. It was an
it's
oversight.
Just an estimate. It's just an estimate.
Well, when you estimate lower than what your actual is, it's a problem, and it gives me cause to question any of these numbers. So,
Yeah,
thank you.
when I looked at everybody's numbers, I focused on the salary estimates. And I definitely obviously missed some like office supply and things like that, but I made sure my review, I looked through all of the salary line items to make sure all of those estimates made sense.
Well, salary's not our only budget item though, so
No, but it's the largest one in the general fund.
thank you.
Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 points. First of all, receiving the information about the proposed cuts to the departments that were requested last Monday, I think it was, that you got on Friday. I don't know why we didn't get that number more quickly than we did.
We were waiting till the end of the day on Friday. We literally had departments responding right at the end of the day. I sent them an email on, was it Wednesday or Thursday, and said, if you're going to be providing some information, can you at least give me a heads up? There are some departments that never responded at all. And I received the last response very late, Friday afternoon, after 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, from an office, that they were not going to be amending their budget.
Okay, the other concern I have, well, actually I have 2 other concerns, but one of those is the reporting of the numbers again. I think there are at least 3 departments where the numbers, the actual, were different than what was projected by
I
you.
apologize.
Pardon me?
I apologize.
But it doesn't help us come to any decisions or conclusions on it.
Yeah,
We
it's the
don't have-
2024 estimate. So if the 2024 estimate for the general fund is about 118 million. So if there are several line items that are, the estimate is lower than the 2024 actual, that would just increase the total expenditures. So the total expenditures would be greater than 118 million. It really doesn't change the long-term forecast.
Okay, and then with respect to the new construction properties tax, when did you finally get that number?
I think just the week before last week, like Thursday or Friday.
And that's incorporated in the property tax figure now?
Not in the general fund, because I'm recommending that I'm assuming based on history that this board will not put in a property tax other than to cover new construction. And my recommendation is that since our payroll tax fund is, and our veterans commission fund is, our little clicker isn't working suddenly, that any sort of an increase go to the Veterans Commission Fund and the payroll tax fund. And not the general fund.
So that was your decision not to.
It's
put it-
my recommendation.
Other comments? Questions? Things we don't have?
And I know there's some other offices and departments that would
What was
like to
the-
address the finance committee as well.
What was the total for the actual department reduction? I-
A little, just 554,000.
544.
Okay.
I received emails from many of the departments with the exact same wording that says that they are unable to reduce their budgets.
Well, one of the ideas that, or we presented this, that the departments were to gather those facts and discuss them with their committees, but I know that they didn't have time to do that. But if they were not suggesting any reductions anyway, it doesn't make a difference. Any other questions for Kathleen? Otherwise, we'll move on. Mr. Rickert. The Regional Transportation and Sales Tax.
Good morning, Tom Rickert with Kane County Division of Transportation. as requested, I have pulled together just some information that's part of your packet, as well as the primary point of discussion that was requested of me was the impact of the potential $4 million reduction in the regional transportation sales tax. And so I wanted to spend just a little bit of time just going over some of the history. Some of this is information that you may have received in previous years. I know last year I spoke to the Finance Committee some, and I spoke with the Transportation Committee relative to some of the historical context of the Regional Transportation Authority sales tax. So I just wanted to mention that this regional, I'll just call it RTA sales tax for short. It was requested by the county transportation departments to better address funding shortfalls and local transportation needs within the Chicago region. This request was made because during that time period in the early 2000s, a lot of the construction costs were tripling in costs. We would have about a $30 a ton bituminous, which is our pavement surface, that went up to $90 a ton. So it was a tripling in costs, and all the region was trying to figure out how do we address this significant increase in costs. KDOT and a couple other counties worked hard with the RTA, with CMAP, and with our legislators to create the funding to address highway safety, capacity maintenance, and transit needs for the counties. We spent almost a year developing all of this information and submitting it to the RTA, the wording, how can we address these issues within the region. And then the county board then spent quite a bit of time after that adopting policies that were guided by a number of public meetings that included meetings that were attended by CMAP, by the construction unions, and by our local municipalities to ensure that these monies were spent appropriately. I just want to mention this, the RTA sales tax is our primary revenue source, and it is a source. Hopefully the clicker wasn't working for Kathy. Hopefully it will work for me briefly. Here we go. I just wanted to show this chart here. The transportation sales tax is 33%, a third of our budget. It is the revenue that we utilize in order to do capital projects. There's a lot of other information that's part of the packet, including some of the historical context, including what occurred as far as how public safety became part of the amended bill in the last hours. The other agencies, again, we worked with the RTA as well as CMAP in order to put these monies in place. Otherwise, we would have been in serious trouble. If you looked at some of the historical context, there's some dates up there. If you're at home, I apologize that you can't see it, but there's some dates under the historical where in 2001, the general fund was in need of some funding, and $1 million of the county highway fund was transferred annually to the general fund. And then in 2008, as part of the RTA sales tax, $1 million was transferred. In 2001, when that $1 million occurred, it was a situation where we had to figure out ways in order to cut our budget in order to address our funding at that point in time. So if you look at some of those historical contexts, we've always tried to figure out, are there ways that are adequate to transfer those funds over to the general fund out of transportation. And during the time period that I've been here, over $4 million of transportation funds have gone to assist the general fund. I assume quite often that is one of the ways that we need to address it. The last time I believe it was in 2017, we actually worked with our IT department in order to pay for some of our services directly so that they were related directly to transportation. So there's a number of items there that you could take a look at. Just a couple of the comments again about the changes in the wording. DuPage County at the time when the bill was amended, it was a situation where DuPage really needed the funding for public safety. So we understand that that those funds can be utilized for that, but we also do our best to ensure that it is services that are not going to be impacted in transportation because of the reduction of the funding. Obviously, this is a policy decision, and from the transportation side, the staff, we do what the board directs us to do, and we will address those issues in the future. Back to this page here, the use of the RTA sales tax. Again, this will have a significant impact to our capital program. When you look at the 60% that is currently part of the recommendation that is moving forward, that 4 million and into the subsequent, sorry, I can't speak right now, subsequent years that we're going to have a situation that will be severe and immediate impact to our capital projects. As many of you know, we're required by law to do at minimum a 5-year financial plan. We typically try to look out 10 years because most of our projects take at least 10 years in order to move forward. So we are looking constantly. We look at those types of impacts if we have situations where the funding isn't coming in. The county board adopted a 5-year fiscal plan back in June, and that 5-year fiscal plan showed in the out years of the 5 years that we had a shortfall of 110 million. That 110 million is pretty significant. You know which projects we are working on. We always know that we will have a shortfall within the financial plan because we're always going after grant opportunities in order to gap that shortfall. In this situation, we have a situation with the 4 million. We're at the point where we're not able to have the matching funds. So the impact is pretty significant because we don't have monies now. If it goes to the 60%, we won't have monies in order to go after grants. And so grants will be focused in the future on maintenance activities, those activities that we have to do. So what I'm going to do is go through a list of the projects, because that was the primary request from this committee, is what are the projects that will be impacted by this change. I will tell you that this reduction of projects, it does save us a significant amount of monies, but it also kind of closes the doors for capital projects. The only capital projects we will be able to do primarily is the maintenance. That 110 million goes down to 33 million shortfall. A lot easier for us to handle over the next 5 years, but it does have a significant impact. So just to go through, and just so you're aware, I am preparing a draft tip that's almost complete. That it's just a draft that I will hand out to Transportation Committee tomorrow morning, but that way they can see exactly what all the projects are and the different costs associated with those projects. So if you look down at the bottom here, projects and programs that will be impacted, there's a list of a number of projects that I have completely moved out of the 5-year program. So these projects were anticipated to start some phase 1 engineering, and we were looking at trying to address these projects at a certain level. The Bowles Corn and Nestler Road, that's a project that I'm still conflicted about, mainly because we do have some impact fee monies that we could probably start on some of the conceptual engineering. But I think for right now, that's a project that needs to be moved out. The Burlington Road bicycle accommodation was removed. Huntley Road from Randall to Sleepy Hollow was removed out of the 5-year. Montgomery Road from Illinois 25 to Hill Avenue was removed out. And Randall Road at Huntley, Randall Road at Kesslinger, That's another one, the Randall Road at Kesslinger, that I need to figure out, because the bridge or the Union Pacific Railroad, that bridge, its lifespan is coming to an end. And so we need to figure out how to move forward, at least the replacement of that bridge, and that bridge needs to be designed. That bridge needs to be designed in order to accommodate the future capacity and safety improvements just to the north of the Kesslinger Road Bridge, or the bridge on Randall Road. I keep saying Kesslinger Road, that's incorrect. It's the Randall Road Bridge just south of Kesslinger Road. So the intersection was going to address that bridge as part of the intersection improvement. We can't move forward with that intersection improvement, but we do need to figure out the Randall Road Bridge because of the lifespan issue. We need to replace that bridge. And then Randall at Prairie, and then the signal system communication expansion. You know that IT and Division of Transportation has cooperated in a lot of the fiber optic within the county. Right now, there is no redundancy, and we started a program to look at redundancy so that if the fiber optic was cut, that we were able to loop it around in a different direction and keep things operational. For right now, we put that on hold as part of the proposed program. Moving on, the list here on the top of the sheet, this is a number of projects that need to move into phase one for various reasons. Actually, all of those projects, except for 3 of them, are in phase one engineering, but we've removed any of the phase 2 land acquisition and construction from the 5-year program in order to get the program somewhat balanced. When you look at that list, some of it is like the French Harmony extension. That's a project there that has impact fees that are associated with it, and we'll try to figure out if there's a way to continue to at least explore some of that aspect of making that connection. The Village of Hampshire has met with us a couple months ago, and they really wanted to move forward with that project, but at this point in time, that's going to be difficult. And then the Randall at US 20 interchange. This is another project that was a preliminary environmental study. And so we're moving into the phase one. It's critical that we move into the phase one, but there's no funding beyond that. One of the reasons we need to move into it is that Randall Road Bridge over US 20, its life cycle is ending too. And so when you have that type of project, you want to try to combine all the construction together. There's significant cost savings. So we will continue all of these projects. You want to move into phase one because if there is opportunity in the future for funding and matching funds, you want to move these forward so that you can at least have the phase one done. You can't even go after grants without the phase one completed. So it's very critical that we move these forward. Again, this doesn't complete the entire gap. There's still a $33 million shortfall on projects for us in the 5-year financial plan, but this at least gets us close. Moving on, no new projects or programs. The list there is just general things that we need to start thinking about. Bicycle and pedestrian projects, existing projects only that are moving forward currently. Intersection safety, operational new starts. At this point in time, our recommendation would be as part of the 60%, the reduction down to 60% is that we add no more of these projects to the program unless something comes before the county board, some type of emergency safety situation where we say we have to address the intersection. An example of that in the list above is the Fabian at 31. The county board, many of you have said that this is important at this point in time to address that concern at that intersection. But at this point in time, we won't be able to move it forward. And so that's why it's part of the list that it would be removed out of the 5-year program. The ride and cane at this point, the low income rides, the county board during COVID, the county board requested that we look at low income rides. We've been utilizing JARC, which is Job Access Reverse Commute federal funds. Those funds have been depleted for the entire region. And so we already have notified the riders, and we did this with the county board a couple years ago during COVID, that this program would eventually end. But we're going to have to bring that to a close because of the funding issues. And we anticipated this years ago. So this is not new because of the changes with the 60%, the reduction of 60%. At the same time, I've had a number of county board members though say, can we extend this program? What we're doing is we are bringing forward tomorrow to Transportation Committee a resolution that appropriates additional funds to at least take the program out through September 30th. That gives the low income riders an opportunity to find alternative rides. So we're at least asking the county board to at least fund it through September 30th so that there's a transition. We continue Ride and Cane is an excellent program. It continues to be funded for seniors, and it will be continue to be funded for mobility for those with disabilities. That's separate funding sources. That's 5310 funds, and we will continue forward with all of that. And that's what it used to be for the past 15 years. It's just during COVID, we did some expansion of the program for the low income and for the veterans. Those are where we're going to have problems. So the 5310, we did take some of those funds, and we took some of the low income riders that were eligible, and we've already moved them into the 5310. So some of them have been moved into the current program, but it's not all of them.
The ones who are, excuse me, the ones who are
Okay.
disabled, like disabled low cost.
Yes, if they were
riders,
eligible, yes. So even though it was job related, if they were eligible for the disabilities and
disabled for
senior,
both
we have
categories.
already moved them over. There's probably about 20 rides, 15, 20 rides that we are not able to, and we've already notified those individuals, even prior to the 60%, because I only found out about that last week, but weeks ago, as well as 2 to 3 years ago, we informed them all that when we start the program, it's only until the money's run out, and they have run out. So the safety enhancement projects, we will be focused on the low hanging fruit. That means like signage, that kind of stuff. We won't be able to actually do capital projects for safety enhancements. And then over the next year, upcoming year, we will evaluate potential reductions in current operations, services, and programs. Overall, the funding, and I can show that on the last page, I believe it is. Overall, the funding, sorry, one more page. When you look at our recurring of revenues, these are revenues that we receive every year versus our recurring expenditures. Our recurring expenditures are already over recurring revenues. Part of that is though because of the project engineering, the phase 1 engineering and such that we have to move forward. But the operational engineering, we still have to do no matter what. There's no way we can reduce those services. It's just the design engineering for the capital projects. The new capital, as you can see, the overall budget that we posted and presented is almost 8% less than the prior year. And a lot of that is because part of what we have to do for projects in our fiscal 5-year planning is that we have to make sure that we have unencumbered revenue in our accounts for matching funds. We are starting to spend those revenues down. And when you look at 2025, 2026, and 2027, a lot of those funds that have been set aside in order to do a project, they will start going away. So you will anticipate the overall budgets going down year to year and seeing something more in line with the 50 million amount, because that's the recurring revenue. So this is just kind of a big picture overview. I'm not sure how else to present the concerns of what will occur to the capital projects relative to the 60%, but this kind of gives you, I think, an overview of what we'll need to do. And I think many of you already knew this, and again, it's somewhat similar to the presentation I gave last year. So, but this at least now you have the projects. We consider maintenance our number one priority. The region, in order to receive federal funds, the region essentially says to the transportation agencies, state of good repair is your priority. After that, it's safety. And so they're really combined, because state of good repair and safety are linked to each other. So I think that the only other comment is that with the matching, if you look at this, try to protect existing grants, that's going to be our primary goal from the staff level. Right now, we have inadequate matching funds for the 25 through 28 fiscal years. I mentioned earlier, we anticipate a shortfall of 33 million for those years by moving all these projects out. We still have that shortfall. There's also, I'm trying to think of I can't see it from here, I apologize. Limit further grant applications. You've heard the saying, the tail wagging the dog. It's difficult to all of a sudden make your program run by the grants that you receive. You still have to do your operations and your safety and your programs. And so it's not wise to go after grants if it's going to harm your maintenance and your safety and your operations. So we're gonna be looking at not going after further grants, except for submitting like bridge maintenance applications. The bridge maintenance applications are critical because they are part of our maintenance. And so to get federal funds to assist us, only about a third, maybe 25 to 30% of our bridges receive federal funds. Most of it has to be paid with local funds. And at any given time, we may have 40 to 50 bridges that are either getting repaired or replaced. And so the federal funds are critical on those replacement structures, because they can, like the Kirk Road Bridge that we're moving forward with, the replacement of that structure is over $30 million. So some of these bridges are extremely expensive. And then the Randall at Hops intersection and the CN Railroad grade separation, this is probably our greatest concern. We've received $37.5 million grant to do this project. The remaining portions have to be local funds, and it's one of the primary reasons for the 33 million. We've really maxed out our grant opportunities, but if the local matching funds are also removed, we're going to have to figure that out. And I have scenarios for that, but I don't want to get into it at this point in time because there's still a lot of unknowns with our budget development. And then the last comment I have there is hope that there are only minor safety and emergency structural repairs. Because we could have something.
Should we keep our fingers crossed?
Yes, it
Okay.
hurts my fingers but it's just something that we need to realize is that like the Hughes Road Bridge, right now, we're shoring up the structure and doing some improvements to make sure that that structure as part of the repairs can be addressed. And we do that once in a while. Our bridge structures, I do need to say, we're in pretty good shape. We probably actually have one of the better programs in place. But that doesn't mean that a bridge can't. We do inspections every 2 years or every 1 year as appropriate for our bridge structures. But you could have a situation where all of a sudden the deterioration of the structure happens fairly quickly, and then we have to figure out how do we handle it. And so that's again a big overview. Those monies are also, when you do construction projects, one of the reasons that the construction unions supported us in getting these funds in the beginning was because of the job creation. And so there's a lot of important aspects, and it's my job to at least share that. It's not my job to create policy. That's your job, and I know that you're in a situation that you need to figure out how to address all of this, and we will respond appropriately at the time that those decisions are made. That's all I have.
Thank you for the confidence in us. Ms. Julie?
So I don't have a ton of questions because I think I asked them that morning that you gave up. I do have a couple comments, though. I have 2 projects on this list and in my district, and I feel I need to advocate for my district. I don't like seeing projects from my district on the cut list. So I also don't like to see all the other ones. I'm also concerned about the riding cane program, which I talked to you about. Sometimes this is the only way these low-income riders and these veterans can actually get to their jobs. And I think it's important. I know it's very costly, but I think it benefits us as a community, as do having roads in good repair outside of my district. Also, we talk about this tax shift with these dollars like it's nothing. Like, oh, we're just going to switch this. It's a $6 million cut that we're asking the Department of Transportation to take. We asked all the other departments and they came up with $500,000. And now we're asking the Department of Transportation for a $6 million cut. It's not a tax shift. It's a $6 million budget cut. So I still stand with the Department of Transportation. I will not be supporting a sales tax shift because it's a budget cut that is larger than any budget cut we're asking any other department in our county. And I don't think that's fair.
Are there questions of Mr. Tepe?
Thank you. Tom, I believe some people on the board are of the impression that if there's thought it was a $4 million, not a $6 million transfer. Am I correct? Okay, $4 million. That some people are of the opinion that $4 million automatically receives $4 million in matching funds. I don't think are there any matching funds that will be affected if for the next year, $4 million is transferred to public safety?
And let me ask, is this a 1-year transfer? Everything goes back then after a year to the?
Never happened.
That was just my question. 1 year.
Okay. One year, the 4 million, essentially, we are always going after grants. And that 4 million is our capability going after those grants. When we accept federal funds, we're expected by the feds in the state to complete those projects. And if we're unable to, that's an issue. So at least at this point in time, we would not be going after additional grants.
But there's no grants that would be affected if for 1 year this happened.
Existing.
Yeah, if it's hard to answer that question. If it's just for 1 year.
Well,
And-
grants are only done based upon new construction. Nothing's on maintenance. Is that correct?
No, we also get grants for maintenance, for bridge maintenance.
For bridge maintenance from the state or from
Yes. No, from the
state?
feds.
from
from the
feds? Okay.
And So it's a situation where if it's just for 1 year, we probably would just not look at grants for this 1 year. Because it is the matching funds. We generally, if you look at our recurring revenues coming in and our annual expenditures, we generally have about $2 million worth of flexibility. And those $2 million is what we generally look at to try to do matching grants for a project. So it's, I can't answer if it's 1-to-1. I don't even, we're always.
That's
submitting-
fine. I thank you. I got that.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand the challenge of my question. Okay. My next question is, if you have a problem with a bridge, is it not then that you get state funds and federal funds when you have problems with a bridge?
There's a rating system that we're required. It's a national bridge system.
Mm.
And it's a rating system we're required to track. We are tracking that and we are developing 5 to 10-year programs continually in order to make those applications available. It's you don't receive it at that point in time until you do the application. Right now, we're down a bridge engineer, and so we have not done anything recently, but we've been tracking it. We do our inspections. We've hired a firm just recently to actually do a program for us in the short term. So we'll be able to see, hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be able to see what the next iteration of bridges will be.
But it's when you have an issue with a bridge that you then get the matching funds.
Yes, it won't be until it actually goes below that rating system.
So this budget reduction really won't affect that. You're not going to stop bridge inspections.
The bridge inspections will continue to go forward.
Okay.
The concern would be having the matching funds in order to say to the feds and to the state, yes, we're able to match this. Bridge maintenance will be our priority. So even if we are impacted with something that comes up, we will make sure that that's taken care of first before some of these other projects. That's why, like Randall at Hops, that's a great project, but if we need to forego that project to do bridge maintenance, we have ways of addressing the money, the cash flow.
Well, I doubt you'd really be changing projects like that. That one's a major one, but I can see you delaying projects that, really haven't even been started, such as the Bowes Road crazy turn at the railroad track. So I can see that really hasn't even started. So some of these projects, you're just talking about delaying projects that haven't even been started.
Those will be delayed no matter what. If we have matching issues, what we've done in the past is we've reduced resurfacing. We have an annual resurfacing program where if we need to find cash flow in order to do a project, we've had tight situations, and what we did is we went without the resurfacing program in order to address that shortfall in funding in the past.
Okay, well, the challenge I have, and I don't think it's going to be solved here, is that so many of these things are iffy that I really don't think you're going to be impacted to any severe degree if this happens, particularly if it's just for a year or two. So that's the conclusion I'm at. Thank you.
Any other questions of Tom? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next on our item is item C, a resolution adopting requests for county offices and departments for proposed reductions in the preparation for our county budget. I guess what this really does is open up discussion for anyone else that wants to present.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We should probably move and second that for discussion and then
Right.
open it up.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Leonard moves.
I'll move, I'll second.
All right, discussion?
Yeah,
Okay.
I know that several departments had emailed me last week asking if they could speak at this meeting today, so if anyone wants to speak.
Now's the opportunity.
Good morning. I wasn't planning on speaking. My name is Lisa Ost from Court Services. I just want to reiterate, put back out there that when we talk about cuts, especially to something as complex as the court system, we can't make these cuts in isolation. And that really is the response that all of us gave finance when the email went out, what can you cut? The state's attorney can't cut without conferring with the public defender to make sure courtroom coverage is happening. I can't cut without conferring with the state's attorney to know how many sex offenders are coming down the pipeline. Like, we have to get together and we have to confer and we have to organize these cuts so that they're strategic and uniform across the department, so we're not adversely affecting the operations of the court. But I will also say that that also goes to the county, because this becomes a larger conversation about what do we want this county to look like? How do we want the court system to function? I want it to be a smooth interface with the public. We give them services. They deserve to know what services they're going to get and not get. And we all need to have a say in that. You're part of the community too. I'm part of the community too. And giving us 2 days or 3 days to figure that out, it is not conducive to that kind of strategic planning. My only ask is that these kind of conversations take time, not a couple of business days. I would ask that we at least be given a year. We need to have these conversations now and continue them throughout the year, not periodically, continuous meetings, in order to talk these things out and figure out what makes the most sense if we're going to constrict the services that are offered. What does that look like? That's my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we understand as a finance committee, having asked all these departments to look at additional potential cuts if they could make them, that we have $544,000 in conceded cuts by a few of the departments. I think there were 4 maybe. So I think at this point, what we have to do is we have to start addressing how we're going to fund that difference, that $4.5 million. And that's the discussion we need to have right now.
Mr. Tepe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to comment that last week in particular, I was extremely impressed with Mrs. Oust's presentation to the Judicial Committee on what budget cuts would do to her. And I think she is just a prime example of the fact that the majority of our departments have done a job in really trying to stay within the original limits that had been granted by had been suggested. I certainly understand any consternation that they have in saying, wait a minute, we haven't had enough time to look at cuts, and I completely agree with that. But one of the things that Mrs. Oust really pointed out last week is that any cuts that she did would be to personnel, and personnel that really do an effective job for this county. So I once again agree with Mr. Leonard that we need to look at how to handle this, not how to cut budgets for people. Thank you.
Juby?
So I agree. I think that we did not give anyone enough time. I was under the impression as a board member that we were going to use our reserves through 2025 and have these conversations for our 2026 budget. So I too was surprised when it was all of a sudden going to be, we have to do it this year. I know that Mr. Leonard is concerned where this other money is coming from, but if you go back to the conversations we had last year, when we were doing this same budget presentation, everyone said they wanted to spend down that excess reserve, make cuts where they can, and plan forward for the 2026 budget. So I propose that we do what we said we were going to do, 24 people sitting at a table last year, that we take the cuts that have been presented to us. We ask everyone else to be very thoughtful in their 2026 budget, and we continue to spend down those reserves like we promised the taxpayers, and then we seek an alternate or two alternate forms of revenue streams, one of which is on the agenda later on. So that would be my suggestion, just because I want to honor the people that sat at this table last year and said those things.
Mr. Leonard,
You know, in principle, I agree with Ms. Juby. However, the problem is we only have 36 million left in excess reserves. So if we take 20 million this year to balance the budget, we would have 16 million left. And with everything going up, we wouldn't be able to handle anything except the option of cutting salaries, employees, for 26. Now, the sales tax referendum, the occupational sales tax referendum would solve that problem. And I look forward to that. However, that wouldn't even be on the ballot until April of 25. So the money wouldn't come in probably until April of 26, when we're 5 to 6 months into the budget without any guarantee that it's going to be passed. So the problem is, what we have to do is, I think we as a group, all of us, all the employees of King County have to realize, if we use reserves this year, which is an option that we can do that, if we in fact don't get this sales tax referendum passed on the ballot in April of 25, there are going to have to be deep cuts throughout the county, whether we like it or not. As long as everyone has enough notice of that, I don't think it's necessarily fair, but it's necessary. So I feel that is something that we, as not only the board, but as all the departments and elected officials, have to understand that if in fact we take 20 million this year to balance our budget and we only have 16 million left, if that occupational sales tax referendum does not pass on the ballot in 26, we only have one option. We have 16 million left in reserves, nothing else, and we have to cut employees. So I think it's important that everybody understand that and have time to digest that and realize it's not pleasant. It's not what we as a finance committee or as a county board want to do, but we won't have an option at that point. So I think it's kind of a, end of the road conclusion that we all have to come to and realize this is what's going to happen if in fact we use 20 million of the reserves this year and these occupational sales tax referendum does not pass.
yes, Ms.
Sorry, I wanted to remind everybody, when we started the 2025 budget process last February, we talked about how we needed all the departments to hold back, so that we didn't have to do big cuts. And we tried to do that. And we gave parameters and guidelines about reducing vacant positions. And we moved along that process for about 2-3 months. And as we got closer to developing a draft budget, we were told that we can't tell departments to remove vacant positions. So we did go down this whole path this year of attempting to hold the budget down. And it came to a head, and we allowed all the departments to put all those expenses in. So I would just be concerned. And just to back up, what Lisa Au said, I mean, we do have an RFP for a strategic plan in development. The board did approve that we issue a strategic plan. If we are going to do any reductions in services, everyone would have to go through that strategically. Perhaps the strategic plan is part of that process. I don't know. But we did try to hold the budget down this year, and we were told that we couldn't do it.
Julie?
So I appreciate all that. I understand this is the lesser of two evils, still choosing evil, whole thing. I think that whatever we decide to do as a board and as a committee, we are going to have to hold off on approving things that were not budgeted. Because we do that all the time. We complain about how we're running through our money and something comes up that wasn't budgeted and we're like, oh, okay. But then when it comes time to fund it, we don't. So in addition to understanding we may have draconian cuts if we don't pass our RTA or our retail sales tax, I think we need to understand as our fiduciary duty is if something is coming before us that is not budgeted, we need to look long and hard at those. And I know we don't. We're just like, okay, everybody's like 7-0 or 24 or whatever, but we have to start getting serious about our job as well.
Ms. Lewis,
Good morning.
good morning.
So, I agree basically with everything that, all of my colleagues have said. And just to reiterate a couple of things, my position on it is, we are gonna have to do a few things. I would support moving the RTA sales tax for the 1 year only, just to get us that cushion in to get us a little extra money that we don't have to take out of our reserves. I want to thank the people that did go through and eliminate $500,000. That's not a sneeze. It's not exactly what we wanted, but it's certainly a start. So thank you for that. I also agree with Ms. House that we do need to do this longer term, everybody working together. And having said that, we need to stop talking about it and pass the motion to let this referendum go forward, knowing that right now, all of our departments are going to have to start with a plan B, that if this sales tax does not get approved in April, that we are going to have to make, as somebody said, draconian cuts. So I think now is the time to start looking at that plan, just in case. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard.
Yes, just one question for Kathy. With respect to the vacancies that we discussed and ended up putting back into the budget, what was the number on that for the number of vacancies and the dollar amount for 25?
So it's a moving target, really. As you know, we've got departments and then we have elected offices.
Mhm.
The elected offices do not follow the county's compensation policy. So for non-elected offices like finance, human resources, transportation, those departments have to come to this committee, board, et cetera, to have a vacant position that's not budgeted. Elected officials do not follow our compensation policy. What their staffing situation was a month ago is different today. So it's already changed. I mean, I can't tell you, they may have had, a particular office may have had 10 vacant positions a month ago. They may have filled them all today.
You know, I understand that. I guess what I'm looking for is a range over the last 6 months or a year. How have the vacancies, how have those numbers fluctuated high to low in numbers in a dollar?
Well, I can tell you, I believe, in one of the meetings that we recently had, we were asking maybe this is a way of getting at it. So there's around 1,300 employees in the county, not including, election workers. And I believe it was 2020, these are 2023 numbers, but about 220, people, left the county. So, I mean, if you think about it that way,
Is that over a year, you're saying?
1 year.
So
1 year.
220 people left in 23 out of 1,300 employed.
Yeah. So if you just kind of do a very rough, let's just say that average employee is about 70,000, and there's no average number, but let's just say you pick a number like that, $70,000,
15 million.
salary and benefits. that's almost $15 million. Yeah.
I guess my question more specifically then is of the 220 people that left in 23, how many of those positions were filled? Or how many were still vacant?
It was 120, wasn't it? Was it
I don't know.
I don't have that number in front of me, but
20 employees? That wasn't 200.
I know that this past spring, there was a significant bump up in hiring at the county. I don't have the exact numbers. I'm sorry. Not right.
The reason why I bring that up is, as I think everybody in the county needs to know, if in fact we add additional reserves this year to balance the budget for 25, and we only have, say, 15 million or less left in excess reserves for 26, I think that is one option that we're going to have to consider, not filling vacancies and not including them in the 26 budget. Once again, is that a nice option? No, it's a terrible option, but it's better than firing people or laying them off. So I just want all the departments and elected officials to know that what we're doing here in taking care of 25 could create some very serious problems for us in 26, unless we get the sales tax referendum passed when it's on the ballot, if we approve that
And
to go on the ballot.
And I would recommend that, as your finance director, I would recommend that sales tax decision sooner rather than later, because we have no control over the outcome of that.
I think our hope is that we're going to move it forward today at whatever percentage we agree upon as a committee.
So,
So-
and I would, again, for the reasons that I talked about earlier, I would not want to be in a situation where we are moving forward and putting the county in a situation where there are draconian cuts that are necessary suddenly. And so we either plan for that. We have to plan for that, I think, either way, because we have no control over the outcome of that revenue source.
We have no option. We have to plan for it. Hopefully, we won't have to exercise it, but we have to plan for it. And we have a year now, at least, to plan for it if we use additional excess reserves for the 25 year. But we have to plan for it.
I think we've already been told that from an employee standpoint, that with our elected officials, we can't tell them what they should have as far as number of employees. So it's a sort of a, I don't know, something. Miss, who wants to speak? Gums, Mrs. Gums wants to speak.
That's so wrong.
Oh, she did?
We can't.
Oh. All right.
You know, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, I disagree with that last statement. We allocate money to every department, elected officials, and every other department, and we can decide what to allocate.
Money is, yeah. We
So-
can't tell them.
They manage their own money, but we can decide how much money goes there. So I think, and once again, we as a committee, I guess I'm speaking for myself personally, I don't want to do anything that's going to cause them problems, but I think we're at a point where the warning has to be made now that we have to start looking at what we're going to do if we don't find additional revenue sources. And the only true revenue source that will solve our problem is getting this occupational sales tax referendum on the ballot and hopefully getting it passed next April.
But it boils down to the fact that our responsibility is to present a balanced budget this year.
Yep.
And I think we've talked about a number of different things that we can do. Do we want to make a decision on those things today, or do we want to put that off until our regular meeting?
Today.
All right. So I think the things to look at, first of all, well, we were talking about $4 million or so in capital improvements.
Well, 4.3 million in capital, 4.5 in RTA sales tax, and then another 4.5 that we're going to have to make up that the departments couldn't meet our hope of getting a $5 million cut in payroll. So, we're looking at I believe $20 million in excess reserves we're going to need to balance the budget for 25.
Yeah, I just did the math here. So the resolution adopting requests for county offices and departments for proposed reductions in the preparation of the fiscal 2025 county budget. If we were to amend that, instead of a $5 million budget cut, it would be $554,339. And instead of 15 million in reserves, it would be $19,445,661.
But that means we're going to do both capital projects and RTA sales tax.
In that 15 million, Kathy, does that include not reducing capital projects and not reducing the RTA sales tax?
No, so we've got a $28 million deficit. So 19.4 would be from reserves, 4.3 would be removing the transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund. And it would also take into consideration the 4 million in RTA transportation sales tax revenue being moved from KDOT.
So you're saying the 19 million, was it in excess reserves we'd be applying?
Yeah, 19,445,661.
And that does include moving the RTA sales tax, and it does include taking the 4.5 million out of capital.
So there's four numbers. There's the reserves, the cuts, the removal of the transfer, and the addition of new revenue of the RTA sales tax. So those four numbers. If you look at the resolution that you have,
We put that up.
yeah, all that we will, not all that we would be changing.
So you're sticking with what's on the resolution right now?
For the two numbers would change. Instead of, there's a whereas the finance committee recommends that 15 million in general fund balance reserves, it would be 19,445,661. The next paragraph recommending that 4.3 budgeted in fiscal 2025 for transfer from general to capital, that would stay there. The next paragraph, whereas the finance committee recommends an additional 4,031,617 in RTA transportation sales tax revenue be transferred from transportation to general, that paragraph would stay. And then the following paragraph where it says that there would be reductions in the 2025 budget in the total amount of 5 million, that 5 million would be changed to $554,339.
Instead of 5 million, it becomes 500.
Yeah, and that difference of 4.5 goes up to the fund use of fund balance from 15 million to 19.4 million.
Does everyone understand? Mr. Tepe?
Mr. Chair, may I make an amendment to the article in front of us?
We haven't, oh yeah, we do have a
We've moved
motion.
it.
Yeah,
So
I'm sorry.
Yes. Make an amendment that the $15 million in paragraph 4 be changed to, give me a second to do my calculation,
19.4 million.
be changed to 19,445,661. And that the $5 million in paragraph 7, that the $5 million be changed to $554,339.
It's a motion. Do we have a second?
Leonard will
Leonard,
second.
second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Juby,
No.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, no.
Tepe,
Except yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Passes 4-2.
Very good. And we're on the amended motion. Any discussion on the amended motion? Further discussion? I'd like a roll call on the motion as amended.
Juby,
Juby, no.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, no.
Tepe,
Steffi, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Passes 4-2.
Very good. Moving on. Item D, a resolution authorizing a submission to the electorate of the County of Kane by referendum on April 1st, 2025, general election ballot, the question of imposing a 1% special county retailers occupational tax for public safety purposes.
Steffi so moves.
Leonard seconds.
Have we moved, Leonard, second discussion?
Mr. Chairman. Yes, there's one thing in this referendum that I know needs to be changed, and then I would like the advice of the state's attorney's office. But where it says, under the amendment, the general election ballot, it isn't a general election ballot in April of 25. It's a consolidated election ballot. So I'd like to amend this resolution to that and any other suggestions the state's attorney has.
Sanchez would second.
So Frank, that is the only thing that needs to be fixed. It's just that the conversion from the prior one that I think that was looked at a few months ago, where we looked at it for purposes of the general election. The changes that were made after we had already looked at it, changed it to kept general election, but it needed to be consolidated. So as long as that's done in every instance, that should be enough to correct this all.
Very good. Ms. Gumps has her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of out of step here, so my computer went down. So I'm going back to something, and I just wanted to make a point that we discussed about the vacant positions thing, and I made an observation that Ms. Hopkinson said that all of those vacant positions have now been filled. So when we navigate that vacant position issue, we're kind of proving ourselves wrong right now that we can't have a list of vacant positions since they've been filled.
No.
Thank you. I think, we're actually into the discussion on.
No, I understand. It's just my
Okay.
computer froze. So I wanted to ask the question before, but technology.
Very good.
It's.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Ms.
just,
Lee.
just to help Ms. Gums, since her computer
Microphone, please.
went down. Pardon me?
Microphone,
Mike,
please.
What I understand is that there were 220 vacancies and 120 were hired, leaving 100 vacancies on the.
It's not.
What?
It's a rolling number, excuse me, Mr. Chair. I think it's a rolling number, and I think was what Ms. Hopkinson said was in 2023, there were 221 people that left the county, and that's a rolling number. So it's very hard to come up with an accurate number of how many vacancies there are in the dollar amount.
Well, if I can just, so when we ask departments to put together a budget for non-elected offices, if you have 10 people and you have one vacant position, you can't create new positions and you can't fill any kind of a position that you don't have budgeted without coming back to the finance committee. And then you have a specific dollar salary line item that you can't exceed. For elected offices, they do not follow the county compensation policy. They can create and change the types of positions that they need to run their office from day to day. And so one day they might need a position A, tomorrow they might need a position B. They do not come back to any committees to request different types of positions. So when we ask people to put together a budget several months ago and they budgeted for vacant positions, as long as an elected official doesn't go over their total salary line, they can run their office as they so choose and change those positions. So we would have to pull everybody as of today to find out how many vacant positions there are today, which we can do,
Our
Okay, and I
discussion
didn't mean to revert. It's just, it was a very
Wow.
important thing. So, it's just really hard to identify that. That's my point.
I'm glad you got your opportunity to speak. I think that what we're talking about is out of order. We really need to move on with the question before us. Yes, Mr. Frank.
SEO Frank, I have one other change that I would like made. So in addition to any referral to general election, being the word general being converted over to consolidated, in the fifth whereas clause, it needs to say third line, instead of saying for the next regularly scheduled election, it needs to be changed to for the next regularly scheduled consolidated election. And that will be the total sum of changes that need to be made via an amendment.
All right. Yeah.
Tepe will move those changes.
Leonard will
You-
second.
Oh, we have a motion to,
It's an additional.
I would
amendment.
suggest, Shepro, I would just suggest that I believe Mr. Leonard and Mr. Sanchez were the movers and the seconders, that they adopt that as a change to their original motion to amend.
Thank you. Yeah, Leonard will accept the adoption to the amendment.
Sanchez accepts as well.
very good. So, Ms. Julie,
I just want to know when we can talk about the amounts.
what, pardon?
When can we talk about the amounts of the sales tax? Do we have to,
Oh,
we
we
don't have
can.
to vote on that?
We have them,
Now, this is.
we have a
only
motion ahead of,
Motion to correct
so we need,
Right after
consolidated.
the vote. we can
So,
vote.
so if we have to take a vote to correct the mistakes that are on here, and then we can talk
can just-
about the percentage?
true.
Okay,
So we have a motion right now, an amendment. So, I call for a roll call.
Yes.
Juby,
Juby, aye.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Tepe, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes. Now, we're further discussion on the original motion as amended.
Okay. Can I talk?
Ms.
Oh,
Julie.
okay, thank you. I don't want to speak out of turn, seeing I'm talking all the time. So when I go back and I look at the projected amounts, which I understand could go south easily, I look at how much money we would be getting in reserves with each of the percentages. I'm finding it really difficult to support a 1% because we're basically stockpiling money, which I don't think we're supposed to be doing. I look at the 0.5% to the 0.75%, and I see that the expenditures forecast at 4% is probably not as accurate, but that is also not taking any consideration into us doing anything with the CPI down the road or any cuts down the road. If we were to, say, adopt the 0.5%, what are our options if we needed to do more in, say, 5 years? Do we have to go back to referendum to do that? We don't ever lose this though, correct? So if we fail at the referendum to raise us from 0.5 to 0.75, and that fails, we don't lose the 0.5, correct?
That's gold.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
All right, so my suggestion would be that we look at a 0.5% because I don't like how much money we're stockpiling at 0.75%.
Is that a
Is
motion?
that a motion?
I don't know. I thought we were still talking about it. I don't like when people make motions and prevent other people from speaking. So I would like everyone to have an option to talk, and then when everyone's finished, I'll be happy to make a motion.
All right.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Mr. Tepe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be happy to try to address that. Okay. The only major options that we have associated with what the board can do is the sales tax option, which you understand now. Okay. Second would be an increasing the gasoline tax. Okay. And third would be the annual PTEL increase. Those are the three major options that we have for increasing revenues. Okay. So if we were to, let's say, increase PTEL, as Kathy informed us a little bit earlier, that would be an increase of a little bit less than $3 million. But that would be $3 million a year. Okay. The sales tax, would give us somewhere in the neighborhood of, at 0.5% would give us somewhere in the neighborhood of 34.5 million. And that would cover our deficit, but we need to really look at providing what is necessary for this county. Part of it is we need office space, and that is extremely expensive, particularly when we do it at the judicial center because of the kinds of construction that's required in any kind of a building in a facility like that. Okay. The second, we've had KDOT up here increasingly telling us about unfunded opportunities that they need and keep planning for. So we've got more than ample opportunities to handle any kind of fund request in this particular neighborhood. So I think going to 0.5% would be very, very short-sighted. We would, in a matter of a few years, be faced with increasing taxes yet again. So in my opinion, the 1% will effectively fund this county for some time to come, and we won't have to go back and ask for even a property tax increase, Mr. Leonard.
Actually, if we had excess funds, we can go and we can actually cut our property taxes.
So, Mr.
That's
Chair,
not gonna happen.
Well, it could be. I mean, if we had the excess funds from sales tax, that we could cut property tax. So that, it's a big story.
so I'm just gonna not let that go because I'm very insulted that you thought you could explain to me what I already understood. We're not talking about a property tax. We're not talking about a gas tax. We're not talking about anything but the percentage. And to couch it with, I just now understand that, I find offensive. So with that said, I would like to make a motion to have the amount be 0.5%.
Leonard will second.
Discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, again, I
Yes.
feel this is very, very short-sighted. We need to fund this county. We don't need to, have any kind of delays associated with it. If we're going to go out for a referendum, let's go out for a referendum that's going to properly fund this county. Thank you.
Other discussion?
Sanchez here.
Sanchez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I do agree with the concept of a 0.75%. Just looking at the projections, knowing that, if nothing is changed, obviously we're going to run out of money with 0.5% in just a few years. We're going to end up in the same position we're at. Going 0.75%, it allows for some flexibility. It gives us more time to really hone our craft as far as, reducing unnecessary budget expenditures and finding more unique and creative ways to fund programming, things like that. But I don't want to see us ending up in the same situation we're at just 4 years down the line with the new board that has to deal with problems that we could have solved. And something to keep in mind, as Mr. Berman said, we can reduce our property tax levy if we have sufficient sales tax revenues that come in. But also if we determine that we really don't need 0.75% sometime down the line, we can walk that back to 0.5%. We have a lot of different flexibility when we go with that route. So I'd be in favor of 0.75%, not 0.5%. Thank you.
Ms. Bates, you had.
I just wanted to say about the 1% being too high. I think the higher the numbers, the higher the percentage, the harder it's going to be to pass with our constituents. And there are other means of us raising money. And I think it's more equitable across the board if we use various means of raising money and don't just depend upon the sales tax. And I have a question. Are there any models about would our sales in King County be reduced? Because people are going to say, if we raise the sales tax, people are going to go buy their cigarettes in DuPage or something. Do we have any models on that, Ms. Hopkinson?
I don't.
I don't blame you. But
I'll add, and this has been talked about before, the sales tax is on. I know from looking at the sales activity that we can get from the Illinois Department of Revenue, two of our highest sales activity areas in this county are along the expressways, both 90 and 88. So.
Ms. Lewis has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. So, the motion on the floor is for the 0.5% sales tax, and I will be voting no to that. In my opinion, if we're going to put this referendum out there and we're going to expend a lot of people's time going for this, I'm in favor of the 1%. As it was mentioned, if we do stockpile money, then we can always, give it back. But I would like to caution, and most of these board members will still be in place, that we also continue to practice fiscal responsibility, not look at, oh, we've got this pot of money, let's spend it. Because I think that's sometimes over the years where we have gotten ourselves in a little trouble. So I think we need to practice fiscal responsibility, but at the same time, go for the 1%.
Kathy, what is the amount of the sales tax for our surrounding counties? What percentage?
So McHenry County just voted in at, I believe, the primary election in the spring. They just voted in a special county retailer's occupation tax for mental health. If you hang on 1 second, I had some previous slides with all of those amounts. Just
I thought so.
okay, so McHenry put in a 0.25 in March of 2024 for mental health. Just other surrounding counties. This was a slide deck that we did back in February, March. Champaign County has 0.25 for public safety. Peoria has 0.50 for public safety. Kendall County has 2. They have the special county retailers occupation tax for 2 different functional areas. They have a 0.50 for transportation and they have a 0.50 for public safety. So that's 1 in total. So that is the county directly south to us. Boone County, which is just northwest of us, is 0.50 for public safety, and Winnebago County, which is Rockford, is 1.5.
DuPage?
They don't have this particular tax.
Okay.
But if you
Will
looked at
County
some
does-
of the other analyses that slide decks that I've presented before, DuPage County's percent, or the money that they take in from the state sales tax, is like double what we get because of just more sales activity in their county, with all the malls that they have.
Mhm. All right. Yes.
Roth here.
Ron?
And this is a question for Ken. What's the total percentage of sales tax that each county brings in? Because we're just talking one portion of the sales tax.
So for Winnebago County, like how much money that is?
Total percentage that they take in. You know, it's 0.5, say for that special, but what about the regular sales tax or the money they receive?
Oh, I don't have all of that, but I can tell you how much money they bring in with those special county retailer occupations.
And it's not just a special, it's just regular sales tax too, because some have higher.
Yep, so
than others.
Call, I used to do that one slide
Yeah.
presentation. I did it many months in a
I
row
know.
where I showed Kane County, McHenry, DuPage and Lake and just took it, just added up all the, what I would call general type
Right.
taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, RTA sales taxes. And then I divided by the number of people and Kane County was the lowest per capita by far.
Yeah.
Lake was the highest. Lake has almost double the property taxes. DuPage has a huge amount. Every county is different. It depends on how the makeup of the county and what their tax base.
Yeah.
DuPage County has tremendous sales tax resources, almost double ours, but their property tax rate is lower because they have so much sales tax revenue.
And really my question is just the sales tax alone, because we're not talking now about other than sales tax right now.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Juby?
because I can count, I'm going to remove my motion for 0.5%.
I'm sorry.
Because I can count, I'm going to remove my motion for 0.5%.
Well, agree. I would like to make a motion. You know, I think, you know, the perception is such an important thing for people voting on this. But if we could come to a compromise between 50, half of 1% and 1% and go with 3/4, what that does is to the voter, it makes them realize that every time they spend $100, they're going to pay an extra 75 cents. That seems reasonable to most people. Not everybody, but to most people. The other thing it does is it generates $51 million, a little over $51 million a year, each and every year going forward, which would take care of our concerns right now where we're roughly 28 million or say 20 million in deficit with the reserves we're putting in. I think it would put us in good stead for maybe the next 5 to 7 years. And quite frankly, who knows what's going to happen after that. So I would move that we change the resolution, amend the resolution to 0.75 of 1%.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for 0.75 discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tepe?
Again, I don't feel that this gives us enough of funding for any kind of capital improvements that we want to do. Okay? That this would, our projected deficit next year is based upon current things is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 million. That would use all of that up. Going forward a couple more years, it's going to do it. We're going to be faced, you know, we're going to be faced too soon with having to do something. So I would strongly advise, and I will be voting to keep the 1%.
You know, we talk about taking out of reserves this year, how much?
19.4.
But that includes the transfer of $4 million from capital projects. It also includes the RTA sales tax, which we thought was 1 year, maybe. Okay. So really, what we're looking at in the future is not the 19, it goes up to
28.
And,
So,
and,
you know, I think
and Mr. Chair, it also includes the fact that there was somewhere between $6 and $8 million in ARPA funds that were used for capital projects. So, you know, we've got major deficits moving forward and we need to properly fund this county.
Any other discussion?
Sanchez here.
Yes, Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I still think that 0.75% is probably the best option for us. If there were other revenues that we needed going forward in the future, we do have other mechanisms like the RTA sales tax transfer, like the consideration of property tax increases, other things like that have been discussed. Those would, you know, move the amount of revenue up much smaller amounts than the sales tax. So I think that's really why we're here today discussing the sales tax. But I just don't think at this time that we've really created any kind of strong argument for 1%. And I think 0.75% is a good place for us. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? We'll have a roll call on the amendment.
Juby, Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Pepe, no.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Berman, no.
Passes 4-2.
All right. So now we have a motion amended to 0.75% sales tax. We have any further discussion?
I just have a question. Does this also include the changes made by the state's attorney? Like we already took care of that, right?
Yes,
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not.
We've already done that.
Okay, great.
this is now the further amended.
Yeah, the amended.
motion.
Version 3.
Roll call, please.
Juby,
Trivia, aye.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Pepe,
Pepe, no.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Passes 5-1.
Very good. Ooh, wow.
Hmm.
Old business.
I think this has now become old business by passage of time.
What?
I said this has become old business by passage of time.
For the amount of time we spent on this. I'm gonna say I'm very pleased that we've arrived at the decision. And obviously, this is our recommendation to our full board, or to the executive committee first, it's full board, but I think we have really put in the effort to do this. And our special meetings, I think, were really important too. So, thank everyone for their efforts. Thank all our elected officials and department heads. I think they worked hard at their projected budgets. And I'm sure they all feel that it's what they need, and I'm glad we're able to carry on. Any other comments from anyone?
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Congratulations to all of us. No executive session is needed. A motion for adjournment.
Leonard moves.
Leonard moves. Pepe second.
Pepe seconds.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? We're out of here.